Figuring out how to get the ball on top of the cathedral helps Leonardo become a great engineer. It helps him become an artist.
So on two of my ties, I have illustrations from Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks. So here's another one of them, and that Leonardo da Vinci wrote in his notebooks backwards.
They say Leonardo da Vinci was more than an artist. He was a man who saw the future. But what if we told you, hidden in his lost sketches, was a device so strange, it shouldn't exist in the 14,000s? For centuries, those pages were gone. Until now. And guess what? Quantum AI has just recreated it, and the result is blowing scientists' minds. What was Da Vinci trying to do? Was he trying to warn us, or was he building something for a time far beyond his own?
Leonardo is, of course, a great artist, but he's also a great scientist, and I would argue a great engineer.
Join us in this video as we reveal the truth that will blow your minds also. You don't want to miss this. The vanished pages. Leonardo da Vinci is remembered as one of history's greatest minds, a painter, inventor, scientist, and engineer all in one. He left behind more than 7,000 pages of notebooks filled with sketches, diagrams, and writings. In them, you can find everything from designs for helicopters to anatomical studies so detailed, they still amaze doctors today. But here's the strange thing. Historians agree that not all of his work survived. In fact, large sections of his notebooks have completely vanished. But where did they go? Some say they were destroyed over the centuries, eaten by time, water, and fire. But others believe something far more deliberate happened, that Leonardo himself might have hidden his most dangerous inventions, fearing they would be misused. In the late 1800s, whispers began to circulate about a missing collection of sketches known as the Codex Roma. Supposedly, these pages contained some of Leonardo's boldest, most mysterious ideas, designs that didn't fit with the technology of his time. The rumors said there was one drawing in particular, a strange device, mechanical yet unfamiliar, unlike anything else he ever sketched. But no one could prove it existed. Now, this is where we'd advise you pay more attention, as it gets even more intriguing from here. For over a century, the Codex Roma was little more than a legend. Then, in early 2024, everything changed. A wealthy private collector in Italy quietly announced that he had acquired a single page from the supposed lost codex. It was fragile, the paper yellowed with age, the ink faded but still visible. Experts rushed in to examine it, but what they found made their jaws drop. The page showed a machine, but not a Renaissance war machine or simple tool. This one had a central sphere surrounded by multiple rings that seemed to rotate in different directions. There were precisely drawn gears, crystal-like lenses, and markings that looked almost like coded instructions. It didn't match any known invention from the 14,000s. In fact, some parts looked eerily like modern engineering concepts that wouldn't be developed for hundreds of years. Historians were stunned. Was this proof that the Codex Roma was real? And if so, what was this device supposed to do? The collector allowed researchers to take high-resolution scans of the page. They hoped careful study could solve the mystery. But the more they examined it, the stranger it seemed. The math was complex, the proportions were deliberate, and the purpose was still unknown. One thing became clear: if they wanted to understand this machine, they would need help from a mind capable of processing possibilities far beyond human limits. And that's when someone suggested turning to a new, revolutionary tool, quantum AI. When the scanned image of the rediscovered page was loaded onto giant display screens at the research facility, the room went silent. It wasn't just beautiful, it was unsettling. The device Leonardo had drawn didn't resemble any known invention from his time. The page revealed a mechanical sphere balanced at its center like a delicate heart inside a cage of rotating rings. Each ring appeared to be set at a different angle, as though designed to spin independently. Intricate gears connected these rings in ways that seemed too complex for 15th century engineering tools. And then there were the lenses. Arranged along the inner arcs of the rings, the lenses were drawn with precise curves. each one labeled with tiny symbols and measurements in Leonardo's mirrored handwriting. But they weren't simply magnifying glasses. The curvature suggested something far more sophisticated, perhaps meant to bend, focus, or even split light into multiple paths. At first, the researchers tried to fit the machine into something familiar. Could it be an astronomical instrument? Or maybe an experimental timepiece? But each theory fell apart under scrutiny. The arrangement of components didn't match the function of any known Renaissance device. But guess what? One breakthrough came when a young physicist noticed a repeating triangular pattern in the gear layout. She recognized it as an early representation of a mathematical principle used today in a cutting-edge field known as quantum stabilization, a method for keeping delicate systems balanced, even in unstable environments. That principle didn't exist in Leonardo's time. In fact, it wasn't even described by scientists until the 21st century. This raised uncomfortable questions. Was it possible Leonardo had stumbled onto a principle of physics centuries before anyone else? If so, how did he discover it? And why would he hide such knowledge? Another strange detail emerged. Using digital enhancement, researchers could see faint guidelines on the paper that suggested parts of the drawing had been erased or overwritten. Some lines stopped abruptly, as if Leonardo had begun sketching something, then changed his mind, or perhaps intentionally concealed the final step. There was also the issue of the symbols. They didn't match his usual notes, which were often descriptive and practical. Instead, these appeared almost cryptic, like shorthand for a language only he understood. The more they studied the page, the more it felt as though Leonardo had encoded a secret into the design. But without more of the Codex Roma, the full picture remained hidden. It was at this point that the lead researcher made a bold suggestion. "What if," she said, "we let a machine think like Leonardo? Not just any machine, a quantum artificial intelligence. Unlike classical AI, which works through sequences of calculations, quantum AI processes countless scenarios at the same time. It can identify patterns too complex for the human mind to follow, and it can make connections across seemingly unrelated pieces of data." The idea was controversial. Some argued that giving an AI incomplete data might lead to inaccurate or imagined results, something historians call hallucinations. But others saw it as the only way forward. To train the AI, they fed it every known work of Leonardo da Vinci, every surviving page, sketch, note, and diagram. This gave it a kind of mental fingerprint of how Leonardo thought, how he designed, and how he solved problems. They then uploaded the high-resolution scan of the lost sketch, instructing the AI to complete the missing elements based on da Vinci's style and logic. The researchers held their breath as the system began processing. For 36 hours, the AI ran through simulations, testing millions of possible arrangements for the unknown components. It modeled how the machine might move, how the gears might interact, and what function the lenses could serve. Finally, the AI's status bar turned green. The screen lit up with a fully rendered 3D model, Leonardo's machine, complete and functional. It was breathtaking. The AI's reconstruction revealed that the rings weren't decorative. They formed a perfectly balanced gimbal system, allowing the central sphere to remain stable regardless of how the outer rings moved. The lenses, strategically placed, could direct and focus light into the heart of the sphere, where a set of mirrored surfaces would split it into multiple beams. These beams, when measured, could detect incredibly subtle changes in light and alignment, the kind of changes caused by shifts in gravity or magnetic fields. In modern terms, the AI had just described a primitive quantum sensor. Such a device, if built, could detect environmental changes that humans can't perceive. Today, quantum sensors are used in high-end navigation systems, earthquake prediction, and even space exploration. But Leonardo had apparently designed one over 500 years ago, without the benefit of modern science or materials. The implications were staggering. If this reconstruction was correct, Leonardo da Vinci hadn't just imagined machines that could fly. He had built a blueprint for a technology that wouldn't be understood until centuries after his death. But there was still one more mystery. The AI reconstruction contained a small, unexplained feature. A compartment at the base of the machine, large enough to hold a small object or device. When asked what its purpose might be, the AI simply returned a cryptic answer: data storage. The researchers exchanged puzzled looks. What data could Leonardo possibly store in the 14,000s? The room fell quiet, and theories began to spiral. Was this compartment meant to hold physical measurements, maps, or star charts? Or was it simply an unfinished element that the AI had extrapolated from patterns in Leonardo's other works? One thing was certain: they couldn't stop here. The next step was obvious. If they wanted to know the truth, they had to bring Leonardo's machine into the real world. And so, a team of engineers and craftsmen was assembled to do the impossible. Take a 500-year-old sketch and build it. But what did they discover and how? You'd want to find out. The quantum AI fully explained. The decision to attempt a real-world recreation of the mysterious device was not made lightly. Building something from Leonardo's time was one thing. Historians had done it before with his war machines and flying contraptions. But this was different. This wasn't just art meeting engineering. This was Renaissance imagination colliding with quantum-level physics. The team assembled for the project was unlike any in history. There were mechanical engineers who specialized in micro-precision components, optical physicists who worked with light at the smallest measurable scales, historians who had spent their lives decoding Leonardo's cryptic writing, and in the center of it all, the quantum AI, now acting as both the blueprint and the silent partner in the creation process. The first challenge was materials. The AI's reconstruction called for components that simply did not exist in Leonardo's time: polished crystal lenses of a purity only modern manufacturing could produce, ultra-fine brass gears with tolerances measured in microns, and a spherical housing made from a lightweight alloy unknown in the 15th century. Yet here's where things became truly fascinating. In several parts of the design, the AI suggested alternatives that Da Vinci himself could have used with the materials of his era. It even presented historical sourcing options: quartz lenses instead of synthetic crystals, and hand-hammered brass that could be precision-filed by a master artisan. It was as though the AI wasn't just designing for the modern lab, but also thinking like Leonardo, offering him paths to achieve similar results with the tools and knowledge he had available. The workshop quickly became a place of controlled chaos. On one side, engineers operated high-powered CNC machines to carve the delicate gear teeth. In another corner, a lens specialist used a 3D laser scanner to ensure every curve matched the AI's exact specifications. A historian sat nearby, reading aloud from Leonardo's surviving notebooks, searching for any overlooked clue that might confirm or challenge the AI's interpretation. And then there was the sphere, the heart of the machine. It had to be perfectly balanced, capable of remaining steady as the rings around it rotated at different speeds and angles. One imbalance, even a fraction of a millimeter, and the entire device would fail. As the days turned into weeks, something strange began to happen. The team members started speaking of the machine as though it had a will of its own. The AI's models would occasionally update overnight, subtly altering gear ratios or lens positions as though it had rethought part of the design in its sleep. No one had programmed it to do this. It claimed it was simply optimizing based on incomplete historical data. Some found this thrilling, others found it unnerving. By the 5th week, the frame and rings were assembled. The delicate gimbal system spun with an eerie silence, each ring moving independently, but always keeping the sphere level. Watching it in motion was mesmerizing, hypnotic, almost. The lenses came next. Mounted into the inner rings, they were angled so precisely that even the smallest shift in position could throw off the focus point at the sphere's core. During installation, the AI insisted on testing each lens individually, directing the technicians to shine light through them and measure its behavior down to the nanometer. It was during one of these tests that something unexpected occurred. When a beam of light passed through the complete lens arrangement for the first time, it didn't just focus into the sphere, it split into multiple shimmering threads, each refracting in a slightly different direction. The room filled with faint, rainbow-like patterns on the walls, the light shifting as the rings moved. The AI quietly noted that this effect could enhance the machine's sensitivity to environmental changes, an accidental benefit, or perhaps an intentional one by Leonardo himself. Finally, after more than 2 months of work, the device was complete. It sat in the center of the lab on a raised platform, no larger than a tabletop globe. Brass gleamed under the overhead lights, the lenses catching and bending reflections in strange, beautiful ways. The air around it seemed charged with anticipation. But as ready as they were, there was a problem. No one knew exactly how it was supposed to be operated. The AI had simulated various crank speeds, ring rotations, and lens adjustments, but these were educated guesses. The real test would require trial and error, and possibly patience for results that might take hours, days, or even longer to emerge. The lead engineer stepped forward, gripping the polished brass handle attached to the base. She gave it the first turn. The gears engaged with a sound so smooth it was almost inaudible. The outer ring began to rotate slowly. She turned again, and the second ring joined in, moving at a slightly faster pace. Soon, all the rings were in motion, the sphere at the center steady as a star in the night sky. The AI monitored every parameter: rotational speed, lens alignment, environmental conditions. It projected a live simulation on the main screen, tracking what it called field variance readings. At first, nothing unusual happened. The readings were flat, steady. The machine's hum was barely louder than a whisper. Then, just under 10 minutes into the first run, a spike appeared on the AI's graph. But guess what? It wasn't noise, it was a pattern. The device was detecting subtle fluctuations in the local magnetic field, variations so small that even modern instruments in the lab hadn't picked them up. When the readings were cross-checked against external environmental data, they matched perfectly with tiny, momentary disturbances caused by atmospheric shifts outside the building. The room erupted in stunned excitement. They had proof. The device worked. But then came the moment that would change the experiment from a scientific triumph to something far stranger. The modern recreation and what it means. Just after midnight, when the building was nearly empty and the machine was still running under automated supervision, the AI flagged an anomaly. The sphere's readings had shifted sharply, not due to environmental changes, but something else. The AI's report described it as a localized fluctuation inconsistent with known patterns. In simpler terms, it had picked up something that shouldn't be there. What exactly it detected, no one could say for sure. The AI's own analysis suggested possibilities that ranged from underground seismic activity to an unidentified electromagnetic source. But one line in the report chilled the researchers. Pattern partially matches data sequence from historical astronomical charts in Leonardo's surviving Codex Atlanticus. It was as though the device was detecting something Da Vinci had already recorded, centuries before it existed in physical form. The team knew they couldn't stop now. They had to push the device further, test it in different locations, expose it to different conditions, and somewhere, deep in the AI system, an algorithm had already begun calculating the next step without being asked. The first field test was simple. Take it to a quiet valley with old weather records and nothing dramatic expected. They set it on a tripod, turned the hand crank at the speed the AI recommended, and watched the readouts. At first, the numbers were small, almost a whisper, but over several hours, tiny rhythms emerged, pulses tied to distant thunderstorms, shifts that matched slow-moving pressure fronts. The device detected subtle changes in the air and the ground that ordinary sensors averaged out and missed. It was like listening to the planet on a finer setting. Next, They took it to a seismic monitoring station near an active fault. Scientists there were polite but skeptical. Then, during a week of routine tremors, the recreated device picked up micro-patterns, minute shifts in field alignment and tiny pre-quakes, before conventional seismographs registered anything meaningful. The data were not magic. They were faint, noisy, and needed careful interpretation. But the timing was real enough to make the geophysicists sit up. If those signals hold up across more tests, this kind of sensitivity could lengthen warning times for some events, saving roads, lives, and machines. Through all of this, one fact kept thumping in every scientist's head. The design worked. The ratios of rings, the tilt angles, and the lens curvatures matched the machine's performance so closely that it felt less like a lucky guess and more like engineering genius. The precision of the gimbals kept the core stable under motion in a way modern engineers admired. In small, exact ways, Leonardo's lines were not just artistic flourish, they were instructions that achieved their purpose. That reality pushed the big questions forward. How could a 15th century sketch map so closely to complicated modern outcomes? Was Leonardo simply the world's most devoted observer, someone who saw patterns others missed and sketched the right geometry by intuition? At the heart of it all, one challenging idea kept returning. Whether by accident, craft, or some other source, Leonardo's sketch has become a mirror. It reflects our curiosity and our ambition. It shows us what we might regain and what we might lose when machines can reach back into the past and pull ideas forward. So finally, what next? If this was only one page, how many more hidden designs wait in attics, archives, or private collections? And what happens when quantum AI reconstructs a page that points to something dangerous, or something that reshapes entire industries overnight? That brings us to the end of the video. What do you think about quantum AI creating Da Vinci's lost sketches? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click on the following video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.